Welcome back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. This is the Money in the Bank review show for Money in the Bank going off the air not too long ago over in the US. And we have obviously two new Money in the Bank holders. We'll get into that and who and when do we think they're going to come in and who will they cash in on? We'll have a chat about that as well. But a very fun, action-packed show with an interesting twist at the end, shall we say. But we'll get into all of that. Look, let's start. The first match of the evening was, of course, the women's Money in the Bank matches. And I tell you what, from all the Money in the Bank matches the women have had, for me, this was an all-timer. This was absolutely brilliant. Stephanie Vacquer, Julia, just brilliant to have in there. Roxanne Perez. I think, without being too disrespectful, I think sometimes the women's Money in the Bank matches sometimes the talent is in there is letting down a little bit. But when you've got people like Julia, Rhea, Alexa, Naomi, the whole six in that field were fantastic and it really worked. There was some huge, you got to give a shout out to Naomi and Stephanie Vacquer in this with that double sort of code red pop rock spot which they took. It was scary and amazing at the same time. Again, go and watch it on Netflix if you haven't already seen it. It was, there's a few times, I was sort of wincing at the screen as you do. And also you got to remember a big shout out to quite a few of these wrestlers that have wrestled already. So before Money in the Bank went live, Worlds Collide, which was the Triple R WWE production, Stephanie Vacquer wrestled in that as well and in a tag, and she was on this ladder match as well. These women tore the house down in this ladder match. I absolutely loved it. However, was it a surprise? I don't know. But as Bliss and Ripley were up there fighting for the ladder, Naomi pushes them and goes and grabs the briefcase. Naomi, Miss Money in the Bank. A lot of people will say a long time coming, 16 years in the business, never really hit the height in the WWE for whatever reason, maybe gimmick, maybe storyline, whatever. What she's doing right now is probably her best work in the WWE. I personally think going down to TNA and doing what she's done there has massively helped her career. Naomi picks up the women's Money in the Bank briefcase. And, when you pick up that briefcase, I don't think there's been a fouled cash in for the women yet. And I'm praying that Naomi isn't the first woman to foul on a cash in for Money in the Bank. I'm a bit, it would be bad if she was. It wouldn't be right for her for Money in the Bank. I'm going to give you an interesting theory what I think they should do for Money in the Banks going forward, which may limit somewhat what they could do in terms of participants and stuff like that. So it might not be an idea if they're having this. Should they have this event every year? There's a question for you. I'm going to throw out there to all of you guys on X. Should WWE hold Money in the Bank be a pay-per-view every year, or should they bring it back every now and again? Has it lost its what's the word? Aura. There you go. There's a word. But nevertheless, Naomi wins. Who and when does she cash in? And that's a great question because I kind of got an idea when I think the men's one's going to be cashed in, and we'll get into that in a minute. That's for sure. But I don't know. Naomi's one's a puzzler because she's in the middle of a feud with Jade Cargill that's still going on since WrestleMania. Sometimes the best cash-ins are the ones that come totally, or they are. The best cash-ins are the ones that totally come out of the blue. No one knew Nick Nemeth, Dolph Ziggler was going to cash in on Alberto Del Rio when he did it, and vice, and bits and pieces like that. Edge, for example, New Year's Revolution, when he cashed in for the first time, no one really knew what was going on. And you know, there you go. Interesting times. When will Naomi cash in, and who will she cash in on? Could it be that they do something with an old TNA feel? She wins, she cashes in, wins a championship, and the familiar music of Jordan Grace hits, and those two that had a big feud in TNA. So could happen. Certainly could happen. Wrong, sorry. Stephanie Vacquer, 3 matches in 24 hours. Mad woman. Big props to Stephanie Vacquer. But congratulations to Naomi for finally, I'm not saying finally because she hasn't won the championship yet, but it's within her grasp now, and it really is. And I hope that we see Naomi with gold around her waist in the future. Well, what a match that was. There was a match that was made at Worlds Collide for Money in the Bank, and that was Dirty Dom Mysterio. He got into it a bit with Octagon Jr., who you can see on TNA actually. He's a wrestler on TNA, and he put his Intercontinental Championship on the line against Octagon Jr. Yeah, this was a decent match. I think the build, because there wasn't much of a build to this, it was a solid match. Don't get me wrong, solid match. Octagon Jr. looked great, and the crowd were into him, and that's important, especially when you're in the WWE, and you're getting like Mr. Iguana, I think his name is, from Worlds Collide. He's got massive reaction everywhere. The internet's a buzz about him. That will hit a chord with the WWE because they think about the Benjamins in the WWE, and if that guy, I think his merch might be on sale on the shop. If he starts shipping merch off, that guy's not going to be in Triple R. He'll be on WWE. I can assure you of that. Exactly the same with Octagon here. He with his high fly moves, you know, spectacular high fly moves. Let me get that right. The crowd were just eating it up, and Dominic was the perfect opponent to be honest, for any luchador because he insists he's the best one, and the way that he sells and everything else. But Dominic is more than a luchador for me. He kind of like bridges the gap between American and lucha wrestling in a way actually that's really impressive because he understands it. He understands both sides of it. His dad, Rey Mysterio Jr., obviously plays a big part of that. Um, he's just so good. And to be honest, I don't think a lot of people know how good Dominic Mysterio actually is. And for me, he's been WWE's MVP for at least the last 18 months and continues. And he did win the Frog Splash. He retained his Intercontinental Championship with the Frog Splash. I did never think in a million Sundays that the Intercontinental Championship would change hands in this match. My only thing with Dominic is, since winning Z Intercontinental Championship, WWE have done nothing with it. I think he may have had one or two defenses. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but he's done nothing since winning that championship. And that's the disappointing thing. WWE done so much, put so much effort, so much time, so much money into the build for him to do it, that when he's won it, he's done nothing with it, which is a real disappointment for me personally. Anyway, but we'll see what happens on Raw tomorrow night. That'll be interesting to see with that what is next, because obviously there's the stuff with the Judgment Day and whatnot, and it could be interesting. It could really be interesting, this one. When does the split? SummerSlam? I think me and Andy were talking before. Maybe Andy sees it at SummerSlam. I kind of go along with that. I think he may be right. That could be right. SummerSlam may be the case. 2 night SummerSlam this year, of course, as well. And obviously the next time WWE come to us on pay-per-view is, of course, Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia, June 28th. I think it is. He says, yes, June 28th. It is June 28th from Saudi Arabia, Night of Champions. Every championship is normally on the line there. So we'll see what happens with that. But speaking of championships, we move on to the Women's Intercontinental Championship. Lyra Valkyria, Becky Lynch. And this for me, the first match was good. I enjoyed the first match. This match was great. And you could actually feel the hatred between these two in this match. Valkyria jumping Becky from the start as well. They couldn't wait for that bell. Valkyria, I felt like, was channeling RVD. She was doing some of those barricade leg drops that you would see in the ECW arena. The near falls. Sometimes in wrestling, the near falls just happen for something random, and I don't always like too many near falls. In this match, they just felt perfect. The near falls happened when you expected a near fall to happen. It was just crafted so well, particularly that setup for the top rope manhandle slam. And it's not often that you're on your feet for a potential double count out. You're really not. Let's be honest. You really ain't. And what they accomplished tonight in this ring was absolutely brilliant. And after a series of pin reversals, Becky Lynch grabs a handful of tights and wins the Women's Intercontinental Championship, which for me, to be honest, I would have put it on Becky or someone with caliber to begin with, and then have Valkyria fight from underneath. She's going to have to do that now if she wants it back. I just think the fight like that would have worked better than to have Becky win it now. But nevertheless, this match was incredible. And after the match, Becky Lynch, reminds Valkyria she has to raise her hand, and she did. She raised Becky's hand, and Valkyria tries to leave, but Lynch was like, "You got to do it on all four sides of the ring," and she did. And then she said to Valkyria, "You got to strap the title around my waist." And as she does that, she hits a German suplex and a Nightwing on Becky Lynch. So this isn't over between these two without a shadow of a doubt. Um, I'm liking it. Now, the question is, are we going to see a change here? Are we going to see Valkyria as a heel and Lynch as a face going forward? Because to do that, I know Valkyria was annoyed and I know she was upset. Becky cheated. But or is that what Lyra Valkyria needs to take her bit to the next level and become a champion? Because sometimes you need that cutting instinct, that cutting edge, so to speak, to become champion. Does she need that? We'll have to wait and see. But Becky Lynch, women's IC champion or campion, as they say. But it's time now for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Penta El Miedo, Solo Sikoa, El Grande Amerigable, LA Knight, and Seth Rollins. This was just nuts. I just feel a little bit, and I don't know if everybody agrees, maybe people disagree, um, that this may be a bit too overbooked. We'll get into it in a minute. But what I would say about this is generally when a men and women's match sort of have the same gimmick type of match, the women have a habit of outdoing the men. I don't think they did this time. I think the men's match was just that little bit more, you know, up there. I mean, it was excellent, really. The match moved a mile a minute. And under normal circumstances, it wouldn't have been a good thing. But if you can pull it off, it absolutely works. And I did say that I wasn't sure about if it was overbooked. Now we're going to get into that right now. So overbooked because Braun Breaker and Big Bronson Reed get involved, and so does Jeff Cobb. I'm not going to call him by his WWE name. So does Jeff Cobb and Jacob Fatu. What that leads to, and it was structured in a way that I suppose, regardless of the speed, I suppose they still significantly built to each spot. But what happens in this is that as Solo Sikoa is going to grab, it's him and Jacob in the ring. Jacob's surrounding the bit where Solo is behind, is up the ladder. And as he goes to grab the title, Jacob grabs Solo's foot. And I felt that was a little bit silly because it felt like he was like Solo couldn't move his foot because Jacob's hand was on it. I know it's kind of getting Jacob over, but it looked a little silly. Um, but he ended up, he doesn't say I love you, Solo. It was I hate you, Solo. Pulls him off the ladder, hits a super kick on him. And, you know, it, I suppose, it gave it that big babyface turn from Fatu. The fans have wanted it for ages, so I can accept that, you know. And at that point, Seth Rollins, of course, after that, Fatu puts Sikoa through a ladder with the Uranagi off the apron, walks off. Rollins sets a ladder up, begins his climb. LA Knight pulls Rollins off the ladder, hits a lariat. Knight then climbs the ladder. Rollins then pulls Knight off and he sends Knight into a ladder head first, hits the stomp. Knight is out and Rollins climbs up the ladder to pull down the briefcase. Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker get involved. Everybody else out of the equation, by the way, in this. And I mean, one thing I had to say this. Penta's Mexican Destroyer on a ladder. Fuck me. And I feel for Chad Gable. El Grande Gable, because that was his second match in 24 hours, and he had a match with Vikingo. Uh, I don't even know if his head was still on his shoulders after that match, let alone this one. You know, Jesus. It was Christ. Uh, yeah, props to Gable, props to everyone. Andrade, all six men out of this has come out looking like $1 million, to be honest. The question is Seth going to be successful when cashing in his championship? Now, my belief on this is that Seth's going to try, at least attempt to cash in on Raw, because on Raw tomorrow night, Gunther takes on Jey Uso for the World Heavyweight Championship. Prime opportunity at the end of that for a cash in attempt, at least. Maybe CM Punk will cut him off. I don't know. Will Seth Rollins be successful in cashing in his money in the bank? I'm going to say no. I don't think he will be. I think Punk will cost him it some one way or another. Then that will continue where they're going with that. But Seth Rollins is Mr. Money in the Bank one more time. For only four matches on the card, Money in the Bank, due to the length of time the Money in the Bank matches get. And it was Jey Uso, it was Cody Rhodes, it was John Cena, it was Logan Paul. I felt like this was should have not have been when you've had those two Money in the Bank matches, when you've had a great IC title match. I feel like you've been setting this match up for failure, you know. Crowd was into this one a lot, a real lot, you know. The match itself, I felt like it was every kind of main event we've had featuring John Cena on his retirement tour. Felt like a Raw main event and not a pay-per-view or PLE main event. I do think one of the Money in the Bank matches sort of stole the show on this, to be honest. This one shouldn't have been where it was in the card unless there was going to be a cash in. We didn't get a cash in, but what we did get was something very interesting and has caused a stir on social media. What we got so there was a point of this show where Logan Paul goes to the top, tries to hit a superplex, catches the drone in his hand. So they've got this drone shot. Cody Rhodes jumps the top rope, hits a superplex, and you see it off the drone view, which was great, by the way. Love that. Love that spot. But during the end of this match, Logan Paul, as a ref bump, Logan Paul does a moonsault off the second rope onto through Jey Uso's on a table. John Cena hits Cody Rhodes with the belt. But someone then attacks John Cena, all in black. He's pounding on John Cena, takes off his hood, takes off the mask. R-Truth or Ron Killings does that to John Cena, allows Cody Rhodes to hit the crossroads and get him 1, 2, 3. And you know, there you go. Cody and Jey Uso pick up the victory on that, thanks to R-Truth. The question is, what is going on with R-Truth? Now, we've heard lots of rumors that obviously he was released earlier on in the week. There was a lot of last week, sorry. There was a backlash of fans trying, we want truth everywhere. They muted it on Raw. They had it even on TNA this week as well. There was talk that TNA were interested, by the way, in R-Truth. I don't know how true that is. Everyone was saying that, he's gone and now he's come back. There was a lot of it saying it was just a work. It was just a work. R-Truth has come out and said it wasn't a work. His son has even come out and said it weren't a work. A lot of the reputable journalists have come out and said, actually, this isn't a work. This was because of fan backlash, because of actually also WWE superstars wanting R-Truth back in WWE. Could this have been one of his last appearances before he goes? Because what he said was that WWE did say that they wasn't renewing his contract. Didn't say when his contract had ended. Is that one of his was that his last hurrah? Triple H made a point afterwards and said when he was pressed on it and said it's all a part of the show. And that's a bullshit. I'm sorry. I love Hunter, but that's a bullshit response. I'm not a fan of that. I'm also not a fan, of this. And this isn't a dig either, R-Truth. But look, Dakota Kai was released. Nothing's happened. They've had releases all the time. Matt Hardy maybe being the one that they brought back. Karrion Kross is in his contract year, maybe his final few months. He's been getting pops of main eventers. I don't get it. He's a comedy wrestler. Love him. Don't get me wrong. I love R-Truth. Think he's hilarious. Fantastic. Great in TNA as well. Great in NWA. Brilliant. But in the WWE, he's been a comedy act for 15 years, near enough. They had a bit of a serious bit with the Miz during the CM Punk thing, John Cena Punk thing. But he's been nothing really, done nothing. 24/7. It's mainly here there for his mouth more than he's in ring. And that's not to say he's not a good in ring wrestler, by the way. I'm not disputing that he is, but WWE have portrayed him in a certain way for 15 years. And you kind of it's like they've released Randy Orton. Do you know what I mean? Like when you release someone, you release him, or when his contract's up, you're not renewing the contract. It's fine. You can do that. And fans have to understand that this shit's going to happen. It's going to happen a lot. And they're throwing, oh, this person's still out. So what? That's who they've chosen. And it is a shame when people contracts are due. Shotzi's just gone to GCW and Shotzi Blackheart has got bookings near enough until the end of this year since leaving WWE. She's coming over here for Progress Wrestling in Manchester, I think, in a couple of weeks. She's fine. Truth could have been picked up anywhere. But if it's true that they've buckled under fan pressure, then that's stupid from WWE. That really, really is. That's in my opinion, anyway. But there we go. Look, all in all, Money in the Bank for me was a great, great show. I thought, I think it was one of the most chaotic and drama-filled Money in the Bank PLEs in a long time. Both Money in the Bank matches are brilliant. I think the men's just topped the women's. The weakest match may have been Cena, the main event one, to be honest. And R-Truth saved that somewhat. Rollins sits firmly in power. And Naomi looms over Tiffany Stratton, whom she hates, by the way. Yeah, and she's thoroughly deserved that Money in the Bank briefcase as well. I think other than a slightly underwhelming main event, the show delivered, and I thought it was great. I loved it. Hopefully you did as well. Let us know in the comments what you thought of Money in the Bank. But that wraps up a fun-filled weekend of wrestling on the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. We'll be back next week with news, reviews, and some interviews coming up this week as well. We sit down with former AEW star Bear Bronson, talking territories. We'll be back with Izzy James as well. We've got some more interviews on the way, so keep a lookout for those. You can keep a lookout on us at HTD Buckle on X, HTD Buckle on YouTube, Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast on all other social media platforms. And until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and goodbye.